Hello.
Hello, how are you guys doing tonight?
Hello.
Taylor Johnatakis.
Hey Taylor, how are ya? We're doing good.
So I've been looking out the window today and it looks like it's raining. Is it raining on you guys?
It's not raining right now. It's just like a misty, kind of foggy, nasty kind of, but it's not raining.
Oh, that's not too bad. You know, it's funny. I've been in here. It's so humbling being in here with other men who have been here, 3 years basically now, 3 years and a few weeks. Some of them have been here a long time, and so it's humbling because it feels like I've been in here forever, but really it's just been a little over a month. But I was looking down on my arm the other day, and my farmer's tan's pretty much gone away. Losing my tan lines, and I look out the window, and I'm like, oh, what would it be like to just take a breath of fresh air and feel the rain on my face? It's just such a mind warp being inside of a jail like this and just being cooped up all the time. Early on, one of the other inmates said to me one morning, he goes, happy Groundhog's Day. And I looked at him, I'm like, oh, is it Groundhog's Day? And he goes, it's Groundhog's Day every day in here. And it took me a little while to kind of process that, but I've thought about it almost every single day as I wake up. When you wake up, it's the exact same thing. You wake up the same and you go to bed the same every day, no matter what. And the only thing that changes is every now and then, you have a visitation, or somebody's got a legal visit, or, every now and then you have court every 90 days or 120 days. It's like, for the most part, it's just the same thing over and over again. I call it the pumpkin patch. Every time I come outside and look down, I'm on the upper terrace, I look down, it just looks like a pumpkin patch, a bunch of orange sitting around on chairs. And anyways, so yeah, it's just the pumpkin patch jailhouse. We actually just got a few new people that walked. Okay, we got a familiar face, Chris Worrell. I don't know if you guys remember him.
When he was going to make it to the pod.
Yep, he made it back in here, and so did Charles Donahoe. He made it in here. He just recently got sentenced, and I guess he's never been in the pod. Somehow he made it 3 years without ever crossing paths in this area. So that's kind of interesting. But they both just arrived here today.
Yeah, there's probably a reason for that. We're not going to discuss it on live stream.
Yep. No, I'm kind of thinking the same thing. But anyways, it's good to have some new people here, and we're going to have some people cycling out here soon enough. One of the things that
maybe for field day, y'all could have Yetman and Worrell do a race.
Yeah. There you go. This morning I woke up and I had a prison dream last night, and the other gentleman that I go to indoor rec with, we all, as we were walking to rec, we were all like, "Did you guys have a jail dream last night?" And, yeah, I did. We all had jail dreams. We're like, how miserable is it when not only when you're awake you're in jail, but when you're asleep you're in jail?
Right.
It's horrible. But I had this interesting dream, and it's completely irrelevant, and it's just a dream. But I filed a grievance a couple days ago, about a week ago now, when I was held in detention and I missed my pretrial sentencing investigation. They left me just in a holding cell for 6 hours, and I missed the appointment. And so at the advice of the CO, I filed a grievance just to let the jail know, kind of put it on record, hey, this happened, and hopefully it doesn't happen again, right? Mm-hmm. And so this was in the dream. So just, all those who diligently listen to this every night that are nefarious, this was just in the dream. But as I was sitting down,
That's for the feds.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, as I was in the dream, as I was sitting down to go with the lieutenant, I assume it was a lieutenant, the white shirt, I guess. And as I was sitting down in the dream, and as he was, the grievance out, and he goes, "Oh, so looks like you got left in a detention cell." I was like, "Yes, I did." And he goes, "Well, we've got some things to cover of our own that we want to talk to you about." He goes, "We went through your cell," and he named off some chemical name, and he's like, "We found this chemical in your cell." And I was like, what is that? He goes, "It was in the Tang." I was like, "It's in the Tang?" I was like, "You mean the Tang I bought off commissaries?" Yes, you had too much of this chemical." And I'm like, "You mean my 2 packs of Tang is contraband?" He was like, "Yes." And I was like, are you like, is this like a countersuit? Like, is this like your grievance for my grievance kind of thing going on? Anyways, I woke up right after that, but I woke up and got in a cold sweat. I'm like, "Is it okay to have Tang in here?" Oh man, you know, you just never know when you can or can't have. That is one of the most difficult things about being in jail, is you just never can rest for just 1 minute. You know, you're at least for me, I've always been a rule follower my whole life. My parents used to say, if you drew a circle around me and said, don't leave the circle, I might walk right up to the edge of the circle and kick and yell and scream, but I would never cross the circle as long as I didn't have permission, right? I have another sister, if you drew a circle around her, my parents used to say, she just, as soon as you turn your back, she'd walk right out of the circle. You know, it didn't matter. And then I had another brother who, they said, if you drew a circle around him and said, don't leave the circle, he'd turn around and ask me, what circle? It's completely different personalities. But it's one of the most difficult things in here is just not knowing all the rules and kind of having to feel out what you can or can't do. That is one of the interesting things. I know Chris Quaglin is constantly complaining that we don't have, I believe it's the Marshal's Handbook inside of the pod, which would allow us to, A, read the rules, become familiar with them, but I wonder, I'm just asking this question, I wonder if the reason we don't have the Marshal's Handbook inside of the pod is because they don't want us to know the rules. Because maybe some of the rules are not being, you know, maybe there's rules against them. Do you get what I'm saying there?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's one thing that would be really improved, is if we even knew the rules. Because I know that most of the guys in here, we want this to be the best jail pod in the United States. We want it to be an example of where the rules get followed, the floors get cleaned, we're clean up after ourselves, and well behaved. But it's really difficult to do that when you don't always know what the rules are, especially for new guys like me, right? New guys like me, we just kind of have to rely on the example of others in order to know what to do or not to do. So that would be one major change that would happen that I think would be really good.
Well, they wouldn't want you guys to be educated, so there's that. I mean,
you know, I heard that, and I heard early on when the guys were on like 23-1 lockdown for quote unquote COVID, right? And they were like, how is this possible? And finally they got educated. I was talking to one of the other inmates that was here during that time frame. He says, you know, finally we got educated and we started writing grievances like, hey, you can't keep us in 23-1 lockdown. And turns out they couldn't. You know, turns out that the marshals came in and were like, yeah, actually you can't do that. And they started to get some of their freedoms back, which is really, you know, incredible. They should have never been taken away in the first place. But that is one of those things that sunlight is the best disinfectant. I'm constantly asking myself, because, you know, to everybody that kind of has been through prison and has been, you know, been through that particular system, on all accounts, it sounds like a better place to be. Right here in the pod, we're completely isolated. We have to stay inside the pod. We're in our rooms a huge portion of the day. But in prison, they talk about moving around, going to different places, having jobs. If you want to just walk around outside all day long, you can. You know, there's like so much more liberty within the fences of the prison, and there's a lot more to do. But one of the things about the prison that I think a lot of us kind of get nervous about is that they don't have nearly the amount of communication that we have available to us. Right here inside, we pay for our phone calls. Either you pay to take the call or we pay to make the call. But either way, someone's paying. But as long as you can pay for the calls, you know, you can make quite a few phone calls, connect with family, you know, which is really important, especially the transition period between jail and prison, right? It's like in my case, I was unexpectedly remanded here. And so there's a lot of housekeeping that had to get done at home, try to figure out how to get my wife some support. She's never worked. She's a stay-at-home mom, 5 kids, homeschooled, and all of a sudden I'm gone. And we had planned on having, you know, a handful of months between trial and sentencing to kind of manage and arrange our affairs. And we didn't end up having that, which has caused, you know, a considerable amount of stress. But in prison, I have to ask myself, why is it that they limit the communication so much? Do you know the answer to that?
I mean, I don't know the answer to that, but I can imagine that they just
need them to assimilate.
Yeah, they need you to assimilate and do your time and be quiet.
And because they can.
And,
okay.
Yeah, and because they can.
You know, anytime that there's a limit on communication, my first thought goes into kind of a 1984 mentality. They don't want you to communicate. They don't want sunlight to come out. When I hear about some of the conditions inside of the jail here when the guys first got here, you know, brown water, raw sewage on the floor, these are facts, right? These are things that the marshals wrote up in a report. Like, the fact that there's limited communication and then what communication did go out wasn't believed, right, is why those conditions could persist as long as they did. Right. And I know for a fact that this vigil raises a lot of of awareness on all kinds of issues inside of the jail, and it definitely, I would say, puts the jail on notice. I've heard multiple guards say, hey, if you have a problem, say something. You guys have, quote, a lot of power. And what that is because we bring a lot of sunlight into the D.C. Department of Corrections. Right. Well, in the jail system, those are all private, for-profit businesses. I can understand if you're a mob boss or a drug kingpin that they don't want you communicating nonstop all day long on the outside, because you could technically, continue to run your enterprise, right? But my thought is, if you're a communication risk, like if you're running a criminal enterprise and you're part of your crime is managing, then the judge could easily sentence you to be, as part of your sentence, to be on a communication restriction, right? But for people like myself, 5 kids at home, I have a family, I wasn't considered a flight risk by the court at all. Like, what purpose does it serve to limit communication to that degree? Does that make sense? Does it really serve a purpose, or does it have a double-edged purpose where by limiting communication, they can also limit the sunlight and transparency that can happen, right? Because you can't really say or do a lot on just a few minutes of phone calling a day. So just something to kind of think about for those of you that are in the habit of writing your congressmen and your senators. Maybe consider looking at some of those protocols with the Bureau of Prisons. The idea that we come to prison and serve these sentences, does it really serve the family? Right? Does limiting communication like that actually create generational trauma when you remove a father or a mother from even having, decent communication? Does that make sense? Right. And being able to connect more than just a few minutes a day on average with family members versus the trade-off of, say, keeping some drug kingpin or some mafioso who's using his phone privileges to, run his criminal enterprise on the outside. That's the kind of the questions that we, the people, and specifically you guys on the outside that have the ability to do this, can ask your congressman and senator. Is society really being served? Are we, on average, breaking up more families by limiting communication with these prison sentences versus, is there a way to kind of have our cake and eat it too? Can we allow people to communicate more with family? Can we allow them to purchase extra minutes at the prison on calling cards or things like that? Does that make sense? Like, why not is really the question that we have to ask. Why not? Is this really something that's just limited to policy, or is this something that we can change? Does that make sense? Is there really a reason for this that it has to be applied to universally? I totally understand that you don't want El Chapo running his drug enterprise from inside the prison like he did down in Colombia, right? But at the same time, I don't understand why I, in the future, should I go into a prison, wouldn't be able to communicate with my 5 children and, talk to them on a much more frequent basis than what I perceive is allowed in the prison system. So just, more questions to ask, I guess.
Well, you get, it equals out to about 10 minutes a day on the phone in the BOP. So you can spend that 10 minutes, you can do it 10 minutes a day, or you can spend that 300 minutes in the first week. But once it's gone, it's gone. And you cannot. And
that's the thing. Is that really adequate? Right? I mean, think about that. As a father and a husband, how do you keep and preserve a family on 300 minutes? That seems very difficult. It seems like an undue added hardship and a burden, right? I mean, they already monitor everything. You're already so limited on what you can do. Why would I not be able to call each of my children for 10 minutes a day?
Right.
Does that make sense? Like, versus traumatizing them and creating kind of it does end up being a generational trauma to remove them to such a degree. And honestly, our legislatures are the ones who can fix that. They really can. I don't know that you couldn't convince Joe Biden to sign a bill that allowed nonviolent criminals or criminals that aren't on a communication restriction via a court's ruling to have purchased.
You have 1 minute remaining.
It seems completely reasonable to do that. So it's something to add to your letters, those of you that write your congressman and senator on a regular basis.
Hey, Taylor, this is Mickey. I just want to say we went to a Bureau of Prisons Senate or a congressional hearing, and the only thing I know for sure is that the BOP is seriously understaffed, and that they have had 8 directors in 11 years. So maybe if they could keep somebody in charge, they could set better policy.
That would be great. That would be great. Before it cuts off, my family's Give, Send, Go is Johnatakis Family Help, and it's givesendgo.com/Johnatakis Family Help. Yeah, for those of you that can speak up and write letters, I think it's worth doing. I mean, it's in my future. It's in a lot of our futures. And there's no reason that the prison system has to be a complete black hole for the families.
That's right. That is true. Well, thank you, Taylor. I appreciate your call.
We love you.
All right, thank you. Love you too. Thanks, guys. Bye.
So it is a good idea to contact your congressman and ask him about these policies. And, these are policies laid out by the American people, so they need review. But please don't confuse those with calls to action. Please do not call the Bureau of Prisons and complain about individuals not having enough time on their phones, because that has caused some problems for some people. So go the congressional route and contact even your local representatives. But the Bureau of Prisons is different than this jail inside when we do calls to action for the marshals and stuff. These men are absolutely in the hands of others, and it has caused some retaliation on some of the people in the Bureau of Prisons. So please communicate with your representatives and not the jails themselves.